Hi, good evening, everyone. So this seems to be the right time to start the session, the last session of the training, which will be going to cover something which has been left out, and also the two modules which is required to be covered for the session. So without wasting more of a time, what we can do is we can actually start talking about the left out topic first, and then whatever was left out in the last training, last topic, which is in context to replication, I will show it to you later. Okay, so let me start with the topic which has actually been the last topic of the day, which will be because I wanted to start some topics like which are lengthier in terms of exercise. So uh, let's concentrate on those topics first. Then we'll talk about something which is theoretically covered and not more of a practical. You can see some later. So to start off with, that we'll be going to talk about the one of the servers which has actually been offered as the last module, which is the module 12, which is talking about a data service. So in this data services, we'll be going to talk about majorly three major topics. Actually, there are four topics we'll be going to talk about, but last two topics will be more of a theoretical. So to start up with those topics quickly, let's talk about what all will be the agenda of the last module. I'll come on to that, the 11th module soon, probably after covering this. Idea is that we'll try to cover maximum topic, which is to be done with the practical part to be covered first. Set of topics for the day. So module 12 will be actually talking about two topics, which is practically possible. One is using content delivery network, and one is using file syncs. Import and export services and data box is not been possible practically to be done, and we'll see why it is not possible, because you need to actually call Microsoft representative to avail the services like data box. Okay, so we'll see where as and when those topic will come in context to data box. But right now, just talk about what is something called content delivery network, also known as caching capability or cache server, known as static content caching. We require caching nowadays in many of the applications. So content delivery network services, which is offered by any of the cloud, will be offering the capability of the caching of your content, which is geographically distant uh, and is taking time to actually access those resources because of the network latencies or number of hops which are involved from your source IP to a target ultimate IP. To avoid those level of latency, what we can do is we can actually think of deploying at least the static part of the content somewhere near to the ISP of the specific country, so that user specific to that particular country specific ISP will be able to get at least source content coming from the nearest location. So I'll just explain you what that means, but to see it carefully. So CDN is nothing but a kind of distributed network of servers which can efficiently involve in delivering the content to the user, at least those content which are static content. So CDN caches the content on the edge server. Edge servers are also known as point of presence servers or edge servers or cache servers, we can say. They may be closer to the end users. Normally, edge servers will be either the cloud vendor, they actually take the help of the different countries for the ISP to become a server, and they pay it to them, and the ISP actually resolve the content specific to that site, and I will show it to you. This will give you a lower latency and faster delivery of content. So the benefit will be that you'll get less of a load onto the server, which is ultimately catering your content. So take an example of what exactly happens here. So if a client is making a hit to the origin server, and origin server is actually be making to serve all the content as 120 millisecond, what we can do is we can actually get those content which has been static content, cache somewhere into the nearest endpoint of the client. So this way, that serving those content from the CDN will be actually taking lower latency, and the content will be served and faster served rather than taking higher latency. It will be comparatively lower latency. This is a benefit of CDN. We get it. So how it works, it's pretty simple. When a user requests the server, request for a file, as server looks from the origin server. Origin server is the point of ultimate point of contact where the content has been residing. If the content is not been present in the point of present server, it will be pulled from the origin server and will be cached here. Now the caching server will define the rule as to how long content will be cached. So origin server will be returned to the edge server. Edge server will cache it, and after caching it, return to the requester. In this case, the successive request which will be coming from the same user or from other user will be resolved by the cache server, because now the content has been cached into the cache server. So this way, we can reduce the latency which has been happening in between the actual requester and the actual origin side. So to do this, we actually require a CDN profile to be created. We can create a CDN profile here. You have to specify under which resource group you have to create, and you have to specify the location it has to be created. So, and then it is very important. Pricing model is very important, that this particular type of cache server you'll use. Microsoft also offer their own cache server, but I would recommend to use either Verizon or Akamai. Akamai is one of the best cache CDN servers available for static content caching. Many of the organizations have been using Akamai server on premises as well. Azure also offers you that. And once you create a CDN profile, then you actually have to associate a CDN with the backend origin. Backend origin could be storage, could be a cloud service, could be web app, or could be your custom origin. Could be an external website of yours which has not been deployed onto Azure, maybe deployed onto your on-premises server, something like that. So this way you can do what to the CDN server. You can actually give your own custom domain name, like to a website you can give it. And then you can actually use the CDN features like compression, query string, geo-filtering. So these are the benefits you'll be getting it, and you'll see it soon exactly how it works. But prior, I will show it to you. Let me show it somewhere in the browser. If I just type here Yahoo, specifically to those guys who are sitting in India, can actually look for. If I look for maybe if I just try showing it not here, I'll try showing it into Firefox, because that way we can split it into two different hubs. So let me show it to you. And if I just open F12, which is the browser developer tool from the browser, and if I type Yahoo here, and if I make an enter to Yahoo, just see what will happen in the network part. Let me show you the network part. This is the part. And when I hit onto yahoo.com, what will happen? That first the request will go to yahoo.com, then it will go to in.yahoo.com. I'm talking about from India. And then it is actually fetching the static content like JavaScript, like casting style sheet, like images from s.imd.com. Sometimes it is coming from some other cache server, sometimes it is coming from other, and only the dynamic content is coming from in.yahoo.com. So what does that mean? Just like the resources which have been deployed into Yahoo, in terms of audios, videos, pictures, can come from the nearest server, and this can reduce the latency compared to that if the Yahoo content has been coming all the way from the actual server where the Yahoo content has been deployed. So it may be leading toward more latency. To avoid that, then we can actually look for that from where the image has been coming. You can look for the images which have been coming. It's been coming. It's actually an encrypted image. You can check here. That's an image which has been coming. If I click onto this image, this is actually again all these are images files. You can look for that which image it is. And you can actually look for something called inspector tool to find it out, that which image you want to look from, which particular file it is coming from. So let's say if I just take this image or this image which is coming here. So if I just take the inspector tool and select this image or maybe this image, so you can see, I should not click it, rather I should have taken the mouse over just to show you. So if I take this one as an inspector tool and click onto this, you can see that this image has been coming from a different location altogether than in.yahoo.com. And you can find it out here, it is saying s.ymg.com. So it's a cache server from where the image is coming. So what I want to do out here is I actually wanted to show you that how can we actually avail this kind of capability of CDN. And this is what we'll do. So first what we'll do is we'll be quickly going to a web application. I hope you've been aware of how to create a web app. It's pretty simple to go for web app. So you can actually go to app service. You can actually click on to add, and you can actually add a web app. And if I go to RG2 and if I just specify the name of the web app, Amit, they say dev 1. And let's say I'm taking the runtime as ASP.NET. And let's say I'm taking it into East US. Now think an example. I'm actually sitting here and I'm actually taking the content from East US. And if you can go for review and create, this will be going to create a web app. So it's an empty web app with a single page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy a site onto it. So once the web app will be created, what I need to do is I need to actually open Visual Studio Code, and I'll just open a rehabilitation site. I hope you remember that site, that yoga site which we downloaded. Copy of the yoga. This is the site. Upload folder. So this site has actually been coming from my local folder, and I hope you can remember this site. If I go to index.html, it show you that okay, those are the yoga files. I hope you remember that. We had something called, here I mentioned, yoga for better health flexibility. So I will show you the deployment once uh, deployment will complete for web app. I will deploy it onto that. So the deployment is completed for that web app, and if I just open that web app, just to show, and this right now, if I click onto the browse, it's actually giving me this particular web app URL. And if you hit onto this URL, I'm just putting into chat window. Right now, if you look for this URL is actually giving me a sample page because this URL doesn't have any site deployed yet. Okay, this is the startup page which has been given by Microsoft within the web application or within my PaaS solution as a web app service. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go to my Visual Studio and going to deploy this particular web app. So to deploy it, I'll just go to Azure Tools here. It'll show me my subscription. And here you'll see app service. You'll get MHSA Dev 1, which I just right now created. I right click onto this web app and I say deploy to web app. It'll ask me like that which site you need to deploy. So I've got a site rehabilitation yoga upload. This is the folder. I select this folder and say deploy. Once the deployment will complete, which is going to get completed very soon, you'll see the site will be deployed. Because the content is bit more than a normal small website, so it'll take a time to deploy. I think it has been deployed now. I would request you, the one which I've shown you somewhere in my browser, sorry, in the chat window. If you go to that particular site again and just type here, and open the browser tool if you can, and just type here that Amit sh dev .azurewebsite.net, the one which I've given you into your chat box. Try doing it. Oh, Amit, I said dev one. Sorry, I'm so sorry. So that site will be showing you the. If you go to the network, you can see whether it is font right now. Okay, whether it is font, images, icon, anything which has been coming, all the things been coming from the source location itself. I hope you can make it out what I'm talking about. So this is also coming from the source site. CSS is also coming from the source site. This yoga picture is also coming from the source site. This is not what I'm expecting. I'm expecting the site to come from the CDN. Sorry, the static content to come from the CDN. So to deploy to work let this particular site work effectively, what I need to do out here is that when I'm going to refresh this site, you'll see every content has been coming from AzureWebsite.net. You can check here. AzureWebsite.net, AzureWebsite.net, AzureWebsite.net. So that means it's coming from the origin server. So there's no caching server which has been deployed. So to deploy that caching server, I need to go to portal. One, I can actually go and say here CDN. I can select the CDN. Let's say I'm creating a new one because I was just testing few things or some other batch. Amit sh dev 1. Let's say I'm creating a new CDN profile under source group 2. Under pricing model, I'm selecting a mine. Create. So this is a CDN profile I'm creating. So after creating a CDN profile, I need to actually associate the endpoint, for the cache server. Okay. Endpoint is the one which is actually be determining that from where the cache server will be pulling the content, which is the origin server. Now, this is the job of CDN administrator or cache server administrator. That first time he will pull all the static content from the origin server to the cache server. They have to do that testing. Okay. So in this case, you'll see here soon. If I refresh, I'll be able to see one more CDN which will be coming. This is the CDN. If I click onto the CDN, I have an option to define endpoint. Endpoint determine that from where the content will be pulled. I'll select endpoint and I select the endpoint name I'm giving as Amit SH Dev1, the same name as the CDN profile, and I'm specifying the origin type as I'm pulling the data from the web app. It says what is the web app? My web app is Amit SH Dev1, and origin path I'm saying pull everything from the whole path. If you want to pull it from a specific path, take an example. In my case, I had here, if I just show you, I've got folder as CSS fonts images. What I've done is I've actually considered that I'm taking everything from the whole path. This is my origin host header and optimize for general web delivery. Yes, because I want to use this CDN only for content web delivery, not for media streaming. Let's say YouTube also offers you that country specific caching streaming or stream cache, sorry. Okay, video on demand media streaming like Amazon gives you, Netflix gives you for different particular country specific media streaming. Or maybe the different file server wherein you might be having something called anybody who's been working on torrent or a site like uploadit.to or mediafire or some other kind of CDN server or storage. But I'm only concerned with the general web delivery because my origin server is actually a web app. I can actually associate it with the storage account also, but I just created one. So what I'm trying to do is this CDN is actually going to get connected with the origin server as our web app. But this is not done. This is my part only as a CDN administrator. Now further on, what I need to do is I need to actually define developers. I have to give them the information that all these content, like take an example. If this particular file index.html, which is yoga site, is actually pulling the images. Normally it is taking a relative path wherever the site will be deployed under that images folder. So what I will do is I will use a particular path. Let me show it to you. I've already created a file or the whole project again. I just did nothing great. I'm just telling you what I've done. You can actually do it. I can show it to you again. So it's pretty simple. That I have been to yoga.file, uploaded and open it. What I did in this case, in this particular content is that here I said that now the site which I'm actually going to deploy onto my origin server, and if you see the index.html, we'll be pulling the data from amit.dev1.azureedge.net/images. But in that case, first the content has to be there into my edge server. So I will deploy it later. Let me see whether the endpoint has been created. Yes, it is created. Let me just try checking it here. Amit ssdev1.azureedge.net. Don't worry if it is showing you that page not found. So rather I would request you that not to worry, because it takes time to actually, based upon the pricing model, it takes time to replicate the cache content from the origin server to the all cache server to the different geographical region. So my point is that after a while what we need to do is, maybe after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, this particular URL which actually been shown on your page right now or on your screen, I put it into the chat box. Sorry, I think I'm actually connected to Ramesh only. Just give me a second. The earlier URL was web app. This is the first URL, which is a web app URL. Web app, you can access it. But if you try accessing the second URL, which I'm typing right now, can you please check Amit said dev1.azureedge.net? Anybody? The one which has been put onto your chat box? Is it showing you the site? No, second URL. Amrendra. Amrendra, is second URL working for you? That's what was my concern. First URL is actually the origin site. I'm only concerned that cache server should actually show me the content. If you can ask Kevin or John, is it are they around? So you can ask them, is the edge server is working for them? Okay, they are also facing the problem. So it takes time to replicate. So that's what I already said, guys. So we have to give some benefit of doubt. So don't do anything. Let's wait for that thing to happen. While it is happening, let me show it to you something about the CDN. While the replication is happening, let me show it to you something. This CDN profile, which is created, which is actually pulling the data from the origin endpoint. These are the endpoints. You can define the endpoints here also by clicking on to add endpoint. This endpoint, if I click onto this endpoint, this is the endpoint which actually gives me the information. Okay, that this my cache server endpoint, which is Amit I said dev one.azure.s.net. If somebody will hit onto it, it will actually make a hit onto first. If you just see the slide, it will hit onto the cache server, and cache server will be resolving the request. So I can use it in a very systematic manner. That I don't want to give this URL to any end user. Please understand. This is for CDN administrator only and developer. So right now we all are working as a CDN administrator and developer. So what happens is, like, when this particular URL will be hit, and if the content will not be there, this will be pulling the data from the origin server. And when it will be pulling the data from the origin server, it will be holding the static content cached here. What content cache we'll see here? Just see. Here there is an option available, like cache server will actually be able to compress the data. So take an example from the user to the edge server. When the data will be returned back to the user, cache server does also what? It actually compresses the file on the fly. Okay, so that means the content which has been delivered via the CDN content would be images. Images are very heavy, script are heavy, font files are heavy, and I think these are the things which is required for our static content. So those need to be first compressed, and the CDN server compresses it, and your browser uncompresses it. So over a period of time, like from origin server to the device or to your client, the content which is being going to get traversed will be traversed in a compressed manner. So it will take low bandwidth. So by default, compression which will be on here, because I use the CDN as Akamai. So Akamai can do what? Plain data can be text compressed, HTML data can be compressed, CSS, JavaScript, JSON, XML, all these data can be compressed. That's what as per as Akamai. You can also define caching rule. What does caching rule says? Yeah, we have to wait, Kevin. Rest all have to wait. Thanks for telling. So here, what happens is the caching rule says that by default, if the content will be pulled from the CDN, CDN will cache it for 7 days. But 7 days is a very longer time. Like, that take an example, like, I'm using something called news site. Every 2 days, like, that news is getting older. So I don't want to hold the news specific media data like pictures, videos, audios for 7 days unnecessarily on the cache server. This will actually occupy my cache server. So to avoid the general caching behavior of the web delivery, what you can do is you can actually define the global caching rule. And you can say that if the caching is not been set, this rule is not been set. So default is 7 days. To avoid that 7 days, you can't change it 7 days here. So you have to do it here that you can say override or maybe set if missing. The difference between set if missing and override is ask any developer. Developer while pushing the content from the server, what they can say is like individual content, they can actually set the cache header for them. So if the cache header is missing in the response, then you want to set it, or whether cache content has been mentioned in the by the developer or not, you want it to override, or you want to bypass the cache at all for the content. So you can define. So I say no, I want to override for at least 3 days. And then I can also define something called custom caching. Custom caching means any file with the extension JPG, JPEG, PNG, GIF should be cached only for override, only for 1 day. And paths like /CSS should be cached because nobody changes their style sheets or JavaScript. So that means the script content. So you override it. Actually, it should be cached for maximum. Now it's totally based upon that your organization, how your organization is changing the site content. So otherwise, I say 5 days. For other paths like JavaScript, JS, I want to override it for 15 days. So this way I can define my own caching rule for different content. Just see in the Visual Studio.code. I got .js folder also. I got .images folder also. And I've got a CSS folder also. So I can define different caching rule for different folder. So this way, this is the job of the cache administrator to do this, caching rule rather than relying upon the 7 days default general web caching rule. Second, what I can do is I can actually say geofiltering here. Let that changes to be saved first. Meanwhile, while it has been saved, let me just go again to geofiltering. Here, if you go to geofiltering, what you can do is, I hope you've been aware of that sometime if you try to access some torrent site or something which has been delivered via CDN server or any cache server, so you can define that any content which has been delivered by I will say dev1 to any particular, I can say block for specific countries like China, I want to block it, or I want to block it for France, something like that. So I want to block the path as / full path. But any content coming from my source folder, my root site, delivered via dev will be not delivered to Chinese URL or France URL. You might have heard about that many of the Western Europe sites have been somewhere banned in some part of the globe. Many of the sites of the Netherlands has not been able to give you the content, or Russian content has not been able to get delivered to your location because they apply something called geofiltering onto their cache server. That specific type of content from the site delivered via cache server should not be delivered to Indian region or to South Asian region or to Middle East region, something like that. So that way you can actually apply geofiltering. So now let me see whether the replication has succeeded. Amrendra and other people, can you please check? This is going to show you the site. And now please understand, copy this URL. Let me copy this URL. And let me go to my Firefox and just show you that if I hit from the Azure Edge also, so the content has been coming from Azure Edge. Can you see here, Azure Edge? In this case, what will happen only for first time I am hitting onto Azure Edge. But please understand, this is not what I want. I want that all the content should not come from Azure Edge. This is wrong. I'm not expecting this behavior. So what I want to do is I actually have to go back to my site, and I said like, no, this site now should be deployed to, and now please see it carefully, guys. Don't do anything thrilling. Okay, just see it carefully. I'll just go to back to my deployment screen on my Visual Studio Code. And then I'm going to select my app service. And I'm going to select Amit as a dev one where I need to redeploy. So I'm redeploying the whole site. Let me do that. And don't serve the site right now. So the deployment has succeeded. Now carefully, everyone, refer the first URL I gave, Amit dev1.azurewebsite.net. Actually, the URL which should be given to the end user is this only. But just see what happens here. When I go to network tab here, let me just show you. Amit dev1 azurewebsite.net. If I hit here, or it will take some time. Guys, I hope you've been aware of like what is it happening. Amit dev1.azure-edge.net. I hope nobody actually have hit onto Azure Edge. If they would have hit onto Azure Edge, then they would have done blunder for my site. Because what will happen like now when I'm going to hit onto this site will be partially pulling the content from my website, and partially this content like images, contents like CSS. Let me show you here the CSS. Amit dev azure-edge.net/CSS. Amit dev1.azure-edge.net/CSS. Amit dev1.azure-edge.net/JS. So that means JavaScript, CSS, and pictures will be pulled from the cache server if the cache has been properly replicated. So maybe we'll try after some time, but you have to now hit, guys, this URL. If you try doing so with some other URL, this URL, the one which I've typed onto your chat box. Okay, do not hit onto CDN. Now you have to hit it onto so developer have been told that the content has been deployed to the CDN. Since the developer have been told that content has been deployed onto the CDN, so he changes the content to URL and he says Amit dev1.azurewebsite.net. This site should give me a proper look and feel the way I wanted it. If it is working, then nothing like it. If it is giving you this kind of URL, that means somebody has actually did something wrong in between during deployment. Somebody accidentally referred the CDN. That's why I usually allow this to happen within online training, because one person did something wrong, the whole practical has to be again done. But I hope you understood my point. At the first go, when we are hitting, we are getting the original content from and put it into Edge server. What content was pushed onto the Edge server? It was only the files and all those stuff. Here, the images, the JavaScript, and all those stuff. Next time, what happened is like that particular site, I made a change. I said like okay, the site will be remaining same, but the content, the images will be coming from here. So I changed the URL on those sites. And when somebody will hit onto this particular server, the pages will be coming from the CDN. Okay, images will be coming from the CDN, JavaScript will be coming from the CDN, and fonts will be coming from CDN, and rest will be coming from the origin server. That's what is the point of using CDN. I hope you understood, guys. Let me also show it to you from here. Yeah, this is actually showing it to you because of the cross-site scripting. Because the site, this content cannot come from that. So no problem, I can actually change it to the CSS to come from a different location. But I have to enable the cross-site scripting in my code. So no problem, what I can do is I can actually put for, let me just do it. Just give me a second. CSS just give me a second, because I have to enable otherwise cross-site scripting. So I never wanted to do that. So at least I will see like the pictures will be coming from, if not the JavaScript and CSS, at least the picture will be coming from the CDN. So if you enable the cross-site scripting, any developer who's been there, if we enable the cross-site scripting to the server, we can enable it. But if we enable it, then in that case, it is dangerous also. Just see it carefully. Except the font. Now just see this file, PNG file. PNG is also coming. No, I think something wrong here. Okay, I think the JPEG file has been cached here. You can see here. Let me check. PNG is been coming from. Let me do it again one more time. Okay, I think the font also has not been. I gave a different URL than. Okay, I have to re-change the URL and the site. But my point is now, if I just hit onto Azure Amit Azure Dev dot one dot Azure website.net. So you can check here that this picture, rather than coming from this yoga picture, which is that lady, sitting, this picture rather than being coming from your website, because we hit onto website, but the picture is coming from the CDN. And this way, what will happen, like, that if your site having hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and the content will be coming from the nearest server, so this will be, increasing your site rendering. This will be enhancing your site rendering process. That's why people make use of CDN. So I hope it is understood. You can also test my site, and you can look for that from where that picture called lady in yoga.jpg is coming. Can somebody go to Google Chrome and check? Pretty easy. What you can do is you can actually close the browser. Just open the browser. Just type Amit sh dev1.azurewebsite.net. When you type it, prior typing it, press F12 in your browser. It will give you a browser tool. Here you'll have elements, console, source, network. Just click on network tab and just type Amit dev.azurewebsite.net, and if enter, you'll be able to see that yoga picture. Just take the mouse over onto it, and it'll show you like in the picture has been coming from Azure Edge. Can anybody try? Can somebody respond, please? Is anybody trying? Am I audible? Correct. I hope you understood my point, Kevin, that that particular picture has been coming from Amit dev.azure.edge.net rather than coming from the website, even though we hit onto website. So as a user, somebody hit onto the website, but the data is coming from partially from the website, partially from the nearest CDN. Okay, so this is the benefit of CDN. CDN is basically to actually offer the better connectivity. So now please look into something which is file syncs. So please understand this carefully. File sync. Azure gives you file sync capability. File sync capability will be actually using something called lift and shift mechanism. What you can do is like it can have a centralized file share, somewhere in Azure, and your branch offices backup, your data which you want to back up from the on-premises, you can actually synchronize it to Azure. It can be used for file archiving. So to do this, what we require is like we require something. First, we require file sync components to be understood. So consider here, you actually require a registered server which should have a file sync agent. So I need to have a virtual machine or maybe a physical server. I'm not having a physical server running Windows 2012 or 2016 or 2019. So to simulate this, what I did was I created a virtual machine on VM. So sorry, in Azure. In that particular VM, I installed Microsoft File Sync agent. I'll tell you how. That agent, once it will be installed, need to be connected to a particular sync service. Is need to be configured into your. So just quickly see it carefully. I need to first go to my portal. There is an option available called sync service. This is storage sync service. I'm already created it. So this is a service which you have created. You can also create it by, but there's no option of adding here. You don't have an option of adding here. So when you go to sync service, you got something called cloud sync service here. Okay. Please understand, it should come under marketplace. I hope I made it clear. When you look for sync service, it'll show you that the storage sync service. When you click onto the storage sync service, you don't have an option of adding here. So that's the reason I've been to sync service and I selected, sorry, Azure File Sync Service. This one, File Sync Service. Azure File Sync Service. So I had to add a group under which I need to create it and region. And you have to give the name of it. So I gave the name. I don't want to create it again. I gave a name to this by specifying, just to shorten my job. It's nothing great. This is how we created a sync service. The name I give it as Amit, I said dev sync service under RG2. That is what I created. With the location East US. So when I created the service, it was coming here. By default, it was not showing me any registered server. To show the registered server, I had to go all the way to create a server. So to create a server, I virtualize the server as a VM. So take an example, I created a VM as one of the VM, the way we do it, a new demo VM for sync. Let's say this is the name I'm taking it as. Maybe I will sync it to East US with my East US VM. I'm taking the server. Please, it has to be server only, either 2012 or 2016 or 2019, whatever it is. I'm taking as 20 server, or maybe sync. I think that's a small name. So now let me take it, Amit. Now disk is okay. Networking is. I'll take it in the East US. Okay. Management is okay. I'll take it as no boot diagnostic, no auto shutdown, no tagging, review, create, and just created a VM. After creating that VM, I'll show it to you. But after creating a VM, what I did was I actually been to a URL. I'll tell you how to actually access that URL. And then I downloaded one agent onto it. And after downloading that agent, I have to run that setup. Use that agent. Agent after being downloaded, asked me to actually connect to my Azure subscription. So I had to pass my username and password for my Azure subscription. And then it asked me, okay, which is the storage group, which is the storage sync service which you have configured there. I configured a storage sync service there as, let me show it to you, in a new tab. I'm opening the portal. Meanwhile, the deployment is happening for the VM. So I hope you remember that we create a sync service here. This is a sync service. So I had to give the sync service, but we have to give the service once the VM will be created. So when I give that sync service, that agent actually started getting registered himself to the sync service. And that particular name was registered as a kind of registered server. So that means in this case, what exactly happens, just see the PPT. this particular sync server, I am treating it as a VM, and this particular service, which I'm treating it as actually a sync service somewhere here. And in that sync service, I need to create a group. Group will define like that okay, what data from this particular server to be synced to your sync service or via sync service. So we'll do it just quickly. Let's wait for that VM to get deployed. This is too time consuming. This is what we are following, guys. So I created, again, I'm telling you just to reiterate, I created a storage sync service. Okay. And then I create a VM because I don't have Windows 2012, 2016 or 2019 server in my on-premises location. So to do that, I had to simulate this by creating a server somewhere in my Azure itself. However, we do it with the on-premises, and then I have to that server. I need to install this agent. That's what I'm waiting for that to happen. Oh, let's see. The spinning up of VM has actually been a problem everywhere except Google. So Google spin it within 30 seconds. So just see here where that we got a VM, new demo VM. I just quickly go to connect to that VM, do an RDP. So in this VM, first I'll disable the enhanced security in this VM so that we can actually be allowed to download something from Internet Explorer, which is mine. So let's see. This is the on off. I have to set it off. After doing that, I have to open the Internet Explorer and look for Now look for sync service group. When I click onto the sync service which I created,